Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to come with a quick update on the markets. Obviously, we're getting some volatility right now with some breaking news around the tariffs, around the trade war between China and the US. So this really was to be expected. We were expecting China probably not to back down and probably retaliate with tariffs. And now Trump is talking about retaliating with further tariffs on China. So it's all going on. Obviously, as you can appreciate, I'm still in sort of a makeshift setup for the next couple of days. So I've not been in my usual routine, but the regular videos will be back very, very shortly. But I'm going to try and summarize all of my current thoughts on the market over the next few days. In short, not too much has changed in terms of my outlook and in terms of the adjusted outlook that I have shared last week. So let's jump onto screen share and take a look at the charts. And I'm actually just going to close down my camera for this, just with it being poor quality where I am right now. It's just a little bit easier just to share full screen. So this is what we've said we're looking at on Bitcoin. I've been expecting this push a little bit lower before a bit of a bounce later on this month. It's potential that the downside is now played out for this month. We'll have to see how things develop over the next couple of days. But obviously, if we're not going to push on lower now, given the announcements around these trade tariffs, then obviously there could be some escalation over the next couple of days, in which case Bitcoin trades a bit lower, maybe coming down as low as sort of like into the 93s. But I think this is probably a higher low. And I think from there, we get a bit of a relief rally, probably see some optimism coming into the market. Traders might say, look, we filled in part of this wick. Now we've got the higher low. And yeah, I mean, Bitcoin from there might have a chance to break back up towards the top of the range. So yeah, anything around here really is a fair game for me on Bitcoin. Let's just take these off. Um, so yeah, let's just put our moving averages on. We can kind of see here we've come down. We have tagged this 100-day moving average on the MAs. So potentially we come back up and test this 50-day MA again, and we stay in some sort of consolidation pattern here. I do think there is a real possibility that we do test lower going into early March. So I still think there's a possibility that we flush these lows here. So that could be a equal low to the low we previously had, or maybe we come down a little bit lower. I don't necessarily see us going all the way down to this 200-day moving average. Of course, that is possible. This is going to be moving up, so it's probably going to be in the low 80s by the time price gets down there, if it does actually follow the path I think it will follow. Um, but we might also front run that, and I think this would really spook a lot of people, shake a lot of people out if we got this move. But for me, I think the guys that have distributed up here, they need to get back into this market at what they consider to be a good price. That might be 90K. It also might be a little bit lower. But I think sort of fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with Bitcoin where it is right now. I don't see the bearish case for Bitcoin here. I think at some point we have to look at how the rest of this year plays out. And at some point, we probably see some rate cuts, which I think potentially will be the catalyst for Bitcoin making another leg higher. I don't think it's going to be further talk around things like Bitcoin strategic reserves or a new single big buyer coming into the market. I think as we've seen over the last couple of months, that's just been used as exit liquidity. So I think we're kind of waiting for that Fed pivot. A lot of people are starting to say we'll we will get the Fed pivot from March, and I just don't see it currently. If we look at the inflation forecast, which is now next week, so looking at CPI here for February, so this is going to be on the 12th of February, which I believe is that Tuesday or Wednesday? It's Wednesday. So we're going to have CPI coming out on Wednesday. I think PPI might be a day later. And look, I mean, we've got a forecast of 2.9%. Last month it was 2.9%. We know that the Fed's target inflation level is 2%. we also know that they are prepared to cut rates in anticipation of inflation going down to 2%. They're not necessarily going to wait for this to have to tick all the way down to 2% to then actually start to lower rates. So, any downtick here could be seen as a positive thing. Obviously, if we come in at 2.8 or 2.7, that would be good. If we come in a lot lower, but anything below 2.7, the market could really catch a bid. And potentially we get a reading of say a 2.8, even a 2.9. Obviously, it would show that inflation is not trending higher. So obviously, the rate of change is therefore slowing. So the market might interpret that as progress if we get a 2.9 or either, say 1 point either side of that, and potentially we get a little bit of a bounce off the back of that inflation, assuming inflation hasn't risen. Um, and then I think the market will realize that it actually needs more. It needs to see more. It actually needs to see inflation coming lower, or it needs the job market to start to cool off more. Obviously, we had unemployment coming in at 4%, forecasted 4.1. So job market is still looking fairly strong. And I think we go for one more flush out. I think a lot of people will be thinking that's it, the low's in, and then those people will get likely get taken out, and then that'll be what we need to see happen for this market then to start to get going to the upside again. So, I'm sticking with this view for now. I really think this is how things play out over the next few sort of days and weeks for Bitcoin. If we just come over to X, you can see obviously the story here. This is this evening. President Trump announced 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium tomorrow. I found this comment really funny here. Is Ethereum made of aluminium? Because Ethereum completely dumping off the back of that news this evening. So Ethereum really not looking too great. And if we actually jump onto the Ethereum chart, then we can see that, in my opinion, there's absolutely no reason to deviate away from the current expected path, which is probably some more chop close, coming down closer to 2000 again. Potentially, we even go a little bit lower. We could go as low as 1.8, I think, on Ethereum. I mean, just imagine the pain, imagine the frustration and anger if that were to happen with obviously Ethereum having the ETF. But I think something like that would really, really bottom the Ethereum market, a bit like I'm saying Bitcoin, if it was to flush down into the 80s, would actually bottom the Bitcoin price. I think that might be needed to actually bottom the Ethereum price, and obviously we get some capitulation there. So yeah, Ethereum not looking good. We're just kind of drifting lower here, and obviously we can continue to drift lower over the next few days. At some point, I expect a bit of a bounce at some point this month, and then probably continue downside into early March, and then from there, potentially some sort of flush, and we get the bounce going. And at that point will be the point for Ethereum, I think, really to show itself and attempt to outperform Bitcoin. I mean, this will take a lot of people out of the Ethereum market if it were to happen, and I definitely think that that is on the cards. That is something that traders do need to be aware of. That Ethereum is really weak here, and it needs something to sort of pull it out of this sustained weakness. Obviously, this should be coming back into the 618 levels. If it flushes this level from August last year, flushes out the summer lows from last year, I just think that that would just cause so much pain. I don't see, I don't think there'd be any more sellers coming in after that type of flush. I think that would probably completely flush out all the weak hands from Ethereum, and the diamond hands that are left in will probably be joined by some heavy buyers at that point. And like I say, maybe there's a new narrative on Ethereum where Ethereum ends up getting some yield added to its ETF, which I think could be the catalyst. And then I can see it probably rallying into the summer, and potentially we go to put in a high on Ethereum actually in the summer months, because a lot of people were hoping to sell around sort of March, April time, prior to May, prior to the summer. And actually the market has dumped. And I think a lot of people will be looking to sell therefore at the end of the year. So if we see Ethereum come up to around 5,000, people are then going to be calling for new all-time highs on Ethereum. People are then going to be targeting much, much, much higher prices for Ethereum. Probably there'll be calls for $10,000 in Ethereum by end of year. And of course, that's going to keep people holding, even if we start to come lower and we come back below 4,000. That would, I think, sufficiently give smart money exit liquidity to be able to exit their positions in anticipation of this huge rally into Q4 for Ethereum, which might actually never happen. So I think we've got to expect the unexpected and take a bit of a contrarian approach. I think Ethereum as a long was probably a very, very crowded trade here. And I understand where it went lower. And I think still people here are being a little bit naive in thinking that Ethereum just has to bounce and reverse, just do a complete V bottom here and go higher, as if below 2K is like a ridiculously low price for Ethereum. But actually, we've just gone back to the levels we were at during the summer. And obviously, we've retraced the Trump move, and Bitcoin has shown itself to be the winner this cycle. It's not Ethereum. Ethereum is continuing to underperform. So, until we see some sort of really big flush on Ethereum, then I think that might continue to be the case. So let's just monitor things, but I'm still expecting sort of sideways down in the short term before potentially getting some relief later on in the year. Solana, very, very similar path to the other two. I'm expecting a bit more downside before upside later in the year, and probably timing wise, I also think Solana likely makes its move through the summer, and people that have, sold just before the summer, thinking that alt season will never come, will actually then be trying to get back in and chase this higher, probably in time for whales to sort of dump before we get into Q4 of the year. And yeah, I think you're just going to have to take profits when you get them this year. I think a lot of people think they know best, and I'm noticing a lot of complacency, especially from people I know in crypto, that just are really of the view that crypto has to go higher this year, all because it went higher in 2021 and it went higher in 2017. They seem absolutely just that you can't even get through to them. They are just absolutely brainwashed into thinking that crypto must go higher this year, and it doesn't have to. I mean, if Solana loses 161 here and comes down to the low part of the range, then it's not going to be looking good for Solana. And you probably say that this is distribution and this is the top. And it's going to be very, very hard to see Solana coming back above $200 at all for the rest of this year. So, of course, we could see some sort of flush, but that would have to be very, very quick and, have to be bought straight back up, and we have to reclaim and then start to move higher quickly from there. Because if we consolidate, then obviously we will basically confirm this as resistance, and then we've got a chance of going down and retesting, 120, probably down to 100, and unlikely we recover. A little bit similar to what Ethereum's done. Ethereum's now lost this 3K level, and because it hasn't been able to recover, it's now finding acceptance at lower prices, meaning Ethereum likely trades lower, and then looks to flush the next level, which would be down at the 2000, 2100. Maybe it needs to come down towards 2000 or just below 2000 to actually get that sort of flush in, and for it to be able to turn around. So yeah, that's Ethereum. Naturally, Pepe is also looking weak by default. Obviously, Pepe is the ultimate Ethereum beta trade. It's obviously outperformed Ethereum as well so far this market cycle, in contrast to Ethereum being one of the big, big sort of blue chip meme coins, one of the meme coins for the cycle. And obviously, one of my top picks for this cycle in terms of a meme coin to be long. But even I've had to de-risk here just because there's a real possibility that Pepe comes down and targets the next level, which is going to be around 594. And obviously from, sort of 900 down to 600, that's a 50% drop. So that's a big move. I mean, you don't really want to be holding a crypto. Sorry, it's a 40% drop. You don't really want to be holding a crypto through a 40% drop. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, in my opinion, it's not too late to de-risk on something like this, especially if potentially you're going to be able to buy at 40% lower in a month or two's time. So yeah, currently just waiting to get back into Pepe at a lower price. Obviously, this ascending trend line we currently have as support. So of course, if we are able to push back up towards, sort of, I'd say 1300 on this one, and sort of come back down and stay above this trend line, that would be very, very good for Pepe. And if that were to happen, potentially I'd look to put them buy Pepe around current prices when it comes back down. But Pepe has just shown a complete inability to be able to put a bounce in, which means, the longer we spend just above this trend line, the more likely is that we actually break this trend line and get a full-on flush down to 600 or even as low as 400. Now, that would be a 50% drop from the current price, 55% to be exact. So that's kind of my worst case scenario for Pepe here. But obviously, we have to just be realistic and accept that that is a possibility based on where we currently are. So that's all the majors. That's kind of like all the crypto I wanted to cover. Obviously, dollar still proving to be a little bit sticky up here. I think it might continue to be sticky. It seems to be consensus now that the dollar is just going to fall off the cliff and trend lower. Usually, moves are not that predictable, and of course, you know, the dollar is currently, I mean, when it comes to currencies, it's really a race to the bottom. I know the UK has just cut interest rates. So UK and Europe are looking to cut rates. Obviously, if they cut rates, then there's going to be less demand for pounds and euros. They're going to get weaker because, of course, there's less return to be had on holding those as assets. So that probably props up the dollar for a bit until the dollar actually cuts rates. And like I say, I can't see an interest rate cut happening in March. Maybe we get an interest rate cut uh, later on, still within sort of the first half of the year. But the thing is, the Fed have their hands tied because the Fed can't just cut rates when inflation is still not at their target and when the job market is still strong. People seem to be under this notion that every single Fed meeting, like, it's going to be like a Fed pivot, a Fed pivot, a Fed pivot. Actually, no, that is not how things work. If they pivot too soon, they're going to run the risk of inflation ramping up higher, and they're going to have to keep rates even higher. They might even have to increase rates again, and there'll be more austerity. And this dollar, if they were to, if inflation were to rise, this would go up because, of course, market participants would then say, well, the Fed are going to have to hike rates. So, look, I don't think it's going to come to that, but I'm just saying they're probably not going to cut rates that quickly, as quickly as everybody's hoping for. And what does that mean for crypto? Probably more sideways, maybe more down, but definitely not just completely, V reversing, going straight off to the moon anytime soon. We can look at Ethereum Bitcoin as well. As we said, Ethereum Bitcoin is coming into what is key support, what has been key support, and there's actually more support below. So I think we could come into this range here. And I mean, that would be really, really bloody for Ethereum BTC. I mean, if we look at the current price, then if we were to come all the way down here, that's another 40% drop. So, Bitcoin staying where it's at. If Ethereum were to drop another 40%, well, let's say if that were to happen, it would probably be because Bitcoin has fallen into the 80s. So if we say Bitcoin goes down and bottoms at around about sort of 85, 86, that's basically a 10% move on Bitcoin. So a 10% down move in Bitcoin would be I'm just trying to think, if Bitcoin were to go down 10% and this was to come down 40%, then you're looking at Ethereum falling 50%, basically. So if Ethereum were to fall 50% from current prices, this is like highly, highly speculative. And obviously we are now talking about an absolute worst case scenario. But where are we? 40% move on Ethereum would take us all the way down to this 0.786, down at 1,570. So I think we're going to have to put that on there on the table. Of course, if Bitcoin were to rally 10%, then actually that 40% drop on the Ethereum BTC ratio would only be a 30% drop. So actually that would take us down to this level. But I just think we need to be very, very mindful of potentially where things can go, how ugly things could get for Ethereum and therefore for altcoins as well. So we're going to put those on there for now. And of course, if Bitcoin rallies, 20%, then a 30% drop or 40% drop on the Ethereum BTC would only be a 10 or 20% drop on the actual Ethereum USD price. So this is all complete speculation, but it's just important to be mindful of how long we could go, or sorry, how low we could go, and the fact that we could still be in for more pain. This is why I'm being really, really careful now with Ethereum trades, just because you never want to try and catch a falling knife. And of course, this is most definitely the epitome of a falling knife here. So yeah, let's see how things play out. I do think this level likely holds, and like I say, from here it's another 12% down. So like I say, if Bitcoin were to fall 10% and the ETH BT ratio falls 12%, that's 22% of a drop on Ethereum USD. And that 22% drop from the current price will sort of take us still above, we still be above 2000. So yeah, potentially we just kind of wick below this low here. And I think that would probably be sufficient as well if we were just to come down into this golden pocket and just below this week low. That would probably be enough pain, and we might see the market reverse from there. So, sort of anywhere in this zone here, I'm thinking probably is the low on ETH. But yeah, it's just obviously very important just to be mindful and aware of what the levels are if we do make another leg down, which I think we will do. I mean, XRP here, massive buying wick. Do we uh, do we sort of fill this in on XRP? Does XRP now go into some sort of range between sort of $2.90 and $1.95, like nearly a $1 range on XRP? Possibly. Um, but yeah, I do think at some point XRP does mean revert and does come all the way back down. Like as many of you are aware, it's not my favorite token. The stock markets are just opening up actually. So look, stocks basically down 0.2% on the day. So bit of a wick down so far in the S&P. Obviously, tariffs probably aren't going to do the stock market any favors, but I think stocks will be all right and dig around from here and eventually push higher over the next few months. And they're probably less elastic when it comes to the effects of QE than something like crypto is. Crypto being a complete liquidity junkie, it's like kind of needs easy money to be able to run. However, the stock market will just continue to do its thing, I think. And obviously, if we do flip back to QE later this year, I expect that's when stock markets will probably accelerate higher and could put some top in later this year or early next year. So yeah, there we go. Bitcoin hanging on for now, hanging on for now. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for watching. Obviously, it's pretty hard to have to do these streams with a little bit more of a bearish take and a bearish stance. But I think the really important thing for me is just to keep everybody well prepared here. I don't want anybody to be caught out if this does happen. I'm not saying this has to happen. And of course, we might do something like this. We might even, just do something like that. I mean, we don't have to come this low, but I think it's good to be prepared for that just in case it does happen. Obviously, the majority of us are, pretty heavily long exposed on crypto. I know I am, not as much as I was a week ago, but I'm still very long on Bitcoin and looking to get back into this market on the next opportunity. And for me, this would be a great opportunity if it happens. The same with Ethereum and Solana coming down to test slightly lower prices before pushing on higher. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your days, and I will talk to you all again very soon.